Good morning everyone, it's Nicole from the Physio Crew. It is 10 to 9. I've done Rise networking this morning, which was really good. Lovely to hear about all your businesses and all the exciting things that you've been doing down in Barnstable this week. I am talking to you quickly today about why it's really important not to limp and why early intervention of physio is really helpful to make sure that you're not getting loads of compensation. So number one, the reason that you shouldn't limp is because you're not using a normal movement strategy. So for example, if you're walking around, if you've got knee arthritis or knee pain and you're walking around on a bent knee, that's not an efficient movement strategy. It's likely to cause pain within your back. You're not using your glute efficiently, and so there's some really simple exercises that you can do to try and help with that. One of the things we often look at is whether you can stabilize through your hip without sort of it moving to the outside. We often describe it as popping to the outside. It looks like a Trendelenburg. Now, your hip isn't popping out. People get really worried about bones moving, and they get really worried about bones touching, especially with like arthritis. What you have to remember is that any joint is where a bone and a bone is in contact with cartilage either side. So don't get worried or hung up about the fact that bones might be touching or nerves might be compressed. Every time you bend your elbow to full range like this, you're compressing a nerve. The reason that sometimes things are painful if they're compressed is if it's been pressure has been applied for too long. So for example, a nerve impingement or a nerve compression, what's happened is there's been pressure on the nerve, which means that there's ischemia, which means that there's not blood and oxygen getting to it, and that's what causes the nociception, and then the brain will output that as something like pain. So really important with limping is that you have a little look and you think, right, okay, why am I limping? Is it because of pain? And because sometimes if you improve the movement strategy, sometimes there won't be pain. So the first thing I get you to do, especially if you're limping because of knee pain, is do some static quads. So practice contracting your knee in lying, so you're just pushing your knee down into the bed. Look at your stability on that side. So this wouldn't be appropriate if you've just had a trauma and you think that you fractured your leg. Obviously this isn't appropriate, you need to get an assessment. This is just, for example, if you've got knee arthritis, hip arthritis, and you're wondering whether physio might be able to help, because if we can normalize that gait pattern, that's probably going to take off the pressure within the knee or the hip, and then that will help to reduce your pain. So you want to be looking at your hip abductors. So one of the tests that we do for that is we get you to stand in front of sort of like what we call a plinth, but you can just use a work surface and stand on one leg. See if your knee, your hip and your shoulders stay in line, or whether you kind of go to the side, or whether you lose balance. Because lots of the time people say to me, oh, it's just because I've got poor balance, but it's not actually the balance. It's because you're not using the muscle at the right point in time in the movement. So it could be that you're standing on one leg and the hip is going out to the side, or it could be that you're walking and you're getting the hip going to the side, or you could actually be moving your upper body to try and compensate through counterbalance. So it's really important not to limp, because that puts pressure on your back and in other areas. You also want to be avoiding limping because you're going to get weak muscles. So if you're not using your glute efficiently, quite often if people have back pain, for example, if we get them to do some glute squeezes and we get them to contract the muscle and relax it, we're increasing the blood circulation in that area, and that in itself can help reduce pain. So make sure that you're making sure that your glute is contracting effectively. Make sure you've got the timing of the movement. So what I'll often get people to do when they're walking is I'll say, right, contract your glute now. So as the heel goes down onto the floor, getting them to initiate the movement. Sometimes something like a muscle tap can be really good as well, although people find it a bit weird. But there's a phenomenon that if you tap the muscle in the right part of the timing sequence, you get a stronger contraction in that muscle. So that's very effective too. So those are, I think the title I've forgotten was 3 reasons why you should avoid limping. So 1 is to make sure that you don't get muscle weakness, 2 is that you don't compensate, and 3 is because it's likely to be more painful if you move in a poor movement strategy. So if that's something that you want more information on, I've got 2 discovery calls left for this week. So that's a 30-minute free call with me to completely rack my brains. You can ask me any question about your injury and I can give you advice over the phone. Obviously it's not as good as me seeing you face to face because I can't see it, but we can have a talk and get you on the right path. And there were 3 people that had one last week. All of them actually ended up booking in the end, and they're doing really well, and their pain's already started to reduce. So I'm really pleased to hear that. Well done for those people for sticking with their exercises and following the advice, because that's the main thing. It comes from you. I give you the tools, you have to implement them. All right guys, I'll see you later. Bye bye.